Prime Minister, NHS leaders say there is no chance of them being able to reduce backlogs on treatments in the way that you want if they have to make savings. Are they going to have to make savings to fund part of this pay rise? And then, separately, the Office for Budget Responsibility today has said that the UK's government debt is much more vulnerable to rising inflation than any other G7 leading country. Part of the reason is because of decisions you took as Chancellor on QE and on issuing index-linked gilts. Do you regret those decisions?
So on your second question, Robert, it's something you and I discussed a lot when I was Chancellor. Actually, you'll know we have one of the longest durations of government borrowing out of any G7 country and have consistently reduced the amount of inflation-linked debt over years. That's been a downward trend. It's something that I pointed out as a risk to the public finances when I was Chancellor. And that's why I talked then about the risk to the country's public finances and economic security from rising inflation and interest rates. That's why my first priority is to halve inflation, because that is not only good for families' budgets, eases cost of living pressures, it will over time bring down interest rates, which is also good for government borrowing and the strength of the public finances. So you're right to highlight the risks of inflation and interest rates on the public finances. I highlighted the same risk as Chancellor, and that's why an important part of today's decision is, yes, we are accepting the recommendations of the pay review bodies, but we're doing so without borrowing more, because I don't think that would be responsible for all the reasons you outlined, and without taxing people more. Now, with regard to the backlogs in the NHS, look, I agree. Industrial action, strikes, make it far harder for us to cut the backlogs. Right? We've already had 500,000 people's outpatient appointments cancelled and disrupted by the strike action that we've seen today. It's an enormous number. And in spite of that, though, because of all the other things we're doing, with the funding we're putting into the NHS, thanks to lots of people's hard work and creativity, we are making progress. So last year we eliminated practically the number of people waiting 2 years for treatment. This spring, we're practically eliminating the number of people waiting 1.5 years, and that's come down to just a few thousand now from over 100,000 at its peak. And we have plans in place to continue working on backlogs. But without the industrial action ending, of course, that will be more difficult. And that's why I would urge consultants and junior doctors to accept the recommendations of the independent pay review body. This is not even the government. This is the independent pay review body who has made a recommendation on their pay, which we have accepted in full, on top of all the other things we've done for the NHS, like the long-term workforce plan just the other week, something that has been called for decades, we have delivered. I would urge them to accept this offer from the independent bodies, and that way we can all work collectively together to bring the backlogs down. I know that that's what the vast majority of them want to see happen. That's what I want to see happen, and I'm prepared to work with them to do that.
But will the NHS have to make savings?
As I said, one of the ways that we're raising money to pay for this is through the immigration health surcharge. That is money that goes to the NHS. So when people emigrate to this country, they have to pay something called the immigration health surcharge to contribute to the cost of the NHS, and the cost of that will go up as part of this announcement in order to raise more money for the NHS to help pay for some of these costs.